Hello everybody, welcome to the Disruptive Franchise Podcast with me, your host, Stacey Cam. This week is a solo episode and I'm going to talk to you about what it has been like to spend essentially a year continuously launching for the Disruptive Franchise Awards. Now let me give you some context first of all. So I only took over the Disruptive Franchise Awards in, I think it was February of 2025, and I planned to do the awards in the September 2025, thinking, I've got ages, I don't have to do anything yet. And then in March, I suddenly had a panic and went, oh my goodness, I haven't done anything. So what you probably don't realise when you launch something like an awards event is that there are a lot of moving parts. And what I certainly didn't realise taking it on was that essentially every single phase of the awards would be a launch. Now, if you've never done an online launch before, you will not have a clue kind of how stressful it can be because there is so many moving parts per launch. So someone who's got a big business might maybe launch, big launch, maybe twice a year. And what I found to get all of the bits of the Disruptive Franchise Awards done and ready and sold was that actually I was almost in a continuous launching cycle. So first up, I had to get some sponsors so that I could pay for the venue. So launch one effectively was trying to find sponsorship. I didn't do a big webinar challenge, traditional online launch. Instead, there was a huge amount of lead generation that went in. So behind the scenes, figuring out who did I want at the awards, what kind of business, what kind of day did I want to create, and therefore who was the right person to put on stage. And those people funding the awards were those speaking on stage. We were partners, intrinsically linked. So launch cycle one really was about trying to get sponsors so that I could afford to put the event on. Because I don't know if you've ever tried to do this, but actually trying to fund an event is quite expensive. Venue fees alone are just astronomical. And I had some values. I wanted to make sure that people got, a really good award that was going to last, past, a couple of days. I wanted to make sure that people that came to the event had a really nice lunch, because I hate going to events and feeling hungry because I've just had a couple of sandwiches, that kind of thing, all the values. So announcing that I was doing the awards was the first step. That was kind of launch one, really, before the sponsorship, because I'd never done it before. So my audience didn't have a clue about Disruptive Franchise Awards by and large. Getting the website built, all of the little kind of, those moving parts that we just think happen, making sure that they were done. With the announcement that I was taking of the awards, I also did a waiting list as well, so that when we opened for ticket sales and entries, that I had some people that actually were legitimately interested rather than trying to drum up the business. Sponsorship, like I said, was another launch in trying to get people to fund what we needed to fund. And that was very much like a lead generation approach. So announcing the awards, big social media splash, talking about it everywhere, being lots and lots of social media posts, going live, that kind of thing. Sponsorship, lead generation. Lead generation is behind the scenes, contacting lots of people, trying to figure out, have I got the right relationships already? Do I need to go and build relationships? Who do we want to bring into the Disruptive Franchise universe? Then we had to launch that the award entries were open, because if nobody enters the awards, there are no awards, which is quite a scary prospect. So making a big splash and again, lots of social media and emails behind the scenes, making sure that people knew that the entries were open and that people could actually enter for the awards. They were at a bit of a funny time in 2025. So usually Disruptive Franchise Awards happen around June. So there had been quite a long cycle where nobody had applied for awards because it had been an extended period since the last one. So again, drumming up entries, making sure people are aware. And it's just like any other launch, because you have to tell people, and then you have to tell them again. And then you have to tell them again and again and again and again and again, to the point where I was almost absolutely sick to death of talking about entering the awards, which meant that I kind of got it right in that respect. But I think there's a big misconception that when you put something out, people will see it and they'll act on it. Until there's the urgent, like the deadline is coming, people don't do anything. So I spent quite a long time telling people to enter the awards whilst behind the scenes trying to get the sponsors. And it got into about 2 weeks before we closed the awards. And I was panicking, I'm not going to lie, because we didn't have a huge number of award entries. And it was looking like we were going to have to pull some of the awards because we didn't have enough entries in those categories. Huge launch push. And I was posting like 4 or 5 times a day, plus multiple stories, trying to get new angles on, telling people to come and enter the awards. But it really paid off. 2 weeks of really focused activity, marketing activity and promotion activity and personal outreach meant that we ended up with a record number of award entries. We actually hit 90 award entries. But by and large, that happened in the last 2 weeks before entries closed. And, you know, I remember putting out a post like, I was a last minute Larry the year that I won the award. I was literally like 30 minutes before the entry deadline that I thought, screw it, I'm going to get an award entry in. But wow, you guys are last minute. But so that was, again, a mini launch in itself. And then there's no time to recuperate because actually now that the award entries are done, now we've got to go and get people to buy the tickets to come along to the awards. Now, again, the tickets were open for quite a while. We had an early bird offer, which needed launching and promoting. And then we announced the finalists. And I knew once we announced the finalists that we would get a flurry of ticket purchases. But again, big campaign to make sure that people come and bought their tickets. And still, even after we closed, we had a hard close deadline because I needed to let the venue know about different requirements and things like that. But even after we closed the ticket sales, I still had people messaging me going, I didn't know they were on sale. And so I guess what I really want to get across in here is that you can talk about something until you're absolutely sick to death of it, but there will still be people out there that don't see what you're doing. And throughout all of this kind of launch period, so this period will happen kind of March to, where were we at? Beginning of September. So March, April, May, June, July, August. So 6 months basically of continuous launching. And people still said to me, I didn't know you were doing that this year. Oh, and this is why it's really important to be continuous, consistent, and not be afraid to really go for it. Because honestly, I look back at my feeds and everything I was doing, people must have been absolutely sick of hearing about me doing this thing. But honestly, people in my audience were still like, I didn't see that. But I emailed you. But they didn't see it. And so the lesson here is, however hard you think that you are launching, pushing, being consistent, you can still always do more. Always. And it goes back to a theory, actually, that Alex Hormozy has. He's like a big business guru. To do enough volume that it would be absolutely infeasible that you could fail. Do enough volume that there's no way you can possibly fail. And if I look back collectively between March and September in terms of like announcing all the way to ticket sales, and we did sell out the tickets in the end, that is essentially what happened. We just did such a huge volume of posts and awareness and talks and things like that, that it, in hindsight, just about was implausible. We couldn't have failed. But it took a lot of work. It didn't happen overnight. And the reason I wanted to share that with you in this podcast episode was because I think very often when we're launching a franchise, when we're trying to sell out a class, we just get quite disheartened that nobody's responding. Well, I haven't sold anything. I haven't sold out. Sales conversion rates, you're looking at a benchmark, like an industry average of like 1 to 3% conversion rate. So 1% of everyone who sees everything that you do will buy. And if they're not seeing what you're doing, they can't buy from you. So the resilience, the tenacity, the ability to stay with it even when you're bored of it, I think is actually what made, from a sales perspective, what made the Disruptive Franchise Awards so successful for me. But what made them successful as an event was the purpose. I didn't care that I was getting bored and a little bit burned out of the same message, because it was for a greater good. It was for a purpose above and beyond just what I gained. I needed the sponsorship to fund the day that I wanted to put on for everybody. I needed the entries so that we had the people to celebrate in the room. The purpose was far bigger than just a sales target. And I think where we fall short sometimes is that we're just looking at the sales target. We have to look at the impact. It was the impact that drove the commercial success of the Disruptive Franchise Awards this year. Profit-wise, we did make a much bigger profit margin than previous years have happened, which was brilliant, But comparatively, that profit versus like what I would have paid myself per hour, I mean, I don't even want to do that sum, if I'm completely honest with you. It's not about the money that comes in, it's about how we have the impact of the day. Once we'd sold all of the tickets, or thereabouts, we then also launched this podcast. So this podcast launched on I think it was the 18th of September 2025. I'd been planning the podcast for a while. I'd been doing some of the episodes. We'd had to wait quite a long time. When you set up a podcast and you use something like Buzzsprout as your distribution platform like we do, you have to wait for all of the partners like Spotify and Apple Music to approve the feeds. And I'd basically sat on it for about a month waiting for all of the feeds to be kind of pushed through and live. So by the time we actually got the green light to be able to launch the podcast, I only had 3 weeks before the Disruptive Franchise Awards, in an already very busy month, putting on the first award ceremony I've ever put on. But within 2 weeks, me and the team at the time just pulled out all the stops. We got everything ready, we got it launched, we got the graphics done. We did a big launch event, which was really successful. We pulled a group of people together that kind of went and did reviews, genuine reviews, and shared it for us. And thank you if you were one of those people, because it honestly meant the world. Having really worked my socks off, it was so lovely to have the support of other people who were just backing me and in it with me. And we pulled it off within 2 weeks. I don't recommend, if I'm completely honest, launching a podcast on 2 weeks' notice. It's not ideal. And some of the learnings from that was, the volume of emails was, I actually halved the volume of suggested emails, but it was still too much. We still had a lot of unsubscribes for people that didn't want to get those emails. That's okay. That's absolutely fine. We gave them a soft unsubscribe option so it didn't damage anything. I spent literally all day, the day of the podcast launch, on lives with different business owners. And that was a brilliant thing to do, because it meant that I could get in front of their audiences. And they were all people that had been involved in the Disruptive Franchise Podcast and Awards. But it also meant that more people could actually benefit from the work that we had put in to create the episodes in the first place. So again, impact being key really drove me to do wild things on the day, like bending time and space and fitting in lives around the school run and things like that. But it was so worth it. If I look back over that first, I can't even really say year, it wasn't even a year, that first year of the Disruptive Franchise Awards for me, it was huge volume. It was a huge amount of different types of work. But the impact that we've had, when people message me and say, just listen to this episode, so rewarding, so wonderful. And for those of you that have left reviews this year, thank you so much, because it really does mean the world. It really does. So a lot of work went in. It was constant launching. And like I said, if you're a big business owner, you probably only do 1-2 big launches a year. So to have been in a constant launch phase was a lot. It's not something I'm keen to repeat. But it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about the resilience that I had. I have this really big mindset block. And I've worked with a mindset mentor on this many times. That because I have chronic illness, that one of the things that stops me in my mind being successful is chronic illness, because I have a fear that I won't be able to show up, because I've had to cancel things before and I'm always devastated when I have to cancel something because of illness. But in years gone by, it's really stopped me going all out and pulling out the stops, because I fear that when I'm busy, I stop looking after myself properly. I stop eating my vegetables and all the rest of it. I don't get enough sleep and I crash and burn. And that burn cycle for me, it can be a couple of months. So what I proved to myself this year was that even with chronic illness, I can still be successful. I can still have the impact that I want to have, and I can do it without burning out if I am prepared to accept that some things need to drop. I didn't do everything I wanted to do in my business this year. I did prioritise the awards. So there are other areas of my business that had to slide a little bit more than I'd have liked them to. That is the cost of not burning out. Because as years gone by, I'd have tried to do it all. I couldn't do that. So for me, it proved to me that I could do it, even if I had chronic illness, and I could have a wild, crazy, busy year. And at that point where the awards happened and it was wonderful and I could finally rest, I just held off a little bit on some advice that I was given by a sales mentor that I was working with, that everyone gets like the event and then they shut down for a while. You need the break, physically, mentally, like nervous system needed a break. But before I just completely shut down for a little while, I put next year's event on sale. We announced 2026 at the 2025 awards, the date, the venue, the tickets went on sale. So actually, rather than having a gap and trying to build momentum again, what we did was we just went straight into, right, we're getting ready for next year. And I didn't really feel like doing that, if I'm completely honest with you, because I was knackered. And also trying to do things for 2026 before we'd actually done 2025 even, to make everything line up, just seemed ludicrous. But it was so worth it, because it afforded me the proper rest afterwards. And it meant that all that wonderful momentum and all that goodwill and all of the fantastic experience that everybody had didn't just die with the event. They carried on into 2026. We had sponsors come on board quicker because of that. We had people buy tickets because of that. And it meant that when I did properly shut down for most of October, because it took me a month, it was the best rest that I could have. Because I wasn't sitting there going, oh, I needed to do the thing. I didn't do the thing. I'd done the thing. So another lesson to me is just sometimes we have to push that little bit extra to get a deeper outcome. Push that little bit extra, do the 2026 work, have a better rest, was kind of how I looked at it. So yeah, I hope that's been insightful. I think overall, for me personally, what I learned was that anything is possible. I can do anything that I put my mind to. And you can too, because I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how capable I was. I knew I'd figure it out. But I didn't know what it was going to be like. I knew it was just going to be hard work. The payoff for that hard work and the impact, I couldn't have ever imagined. It was wonderful. It is wonderful. And it spurs me on for next year, which is awesome. So we're going to be announcing the entries as open on the 12th of January 2026. I would love it if you enter, if you're a franchise. They're not about size of your company. We don't care how much you're earning or how big your network is. We want to know what you've been doing in your business. And at the moment, we're just getting all of the website ready and everything to go again, which is amazing, so that we have a break. But yeah, I would love it if you come along, if you enter, if you just get involved in some way, because we've got a real opportunity with the Disruptive Franchise Awards as an industry to use this, not just for the underdog, but for the industry to champion creativity and innovation. And as I've just shared there, the learnings, to be able to finally understand that I can do anything I really put my mind to with a plan and with the strategy, hopefully that inspires you as well, that you can too. Because you absolutely can, even if you're not sure. Now, the final thing in this episode, because this is going out on New Year's Eve, I believe, is to say thank you for being part of the journey in 2025. I can't wait to have you along for 2026. And if you're thinking about franchising in 2026, if you're listening to this as a person who's like thinking about getting involved, head to my website and get my freebie. Go to staceycan.com/stuck to scale. And there you will have a little mini course completely for free to work out if franchising is right for you or not. Have a wonderful 2026. I can't wait to be with you every week, sharing learnings from the industry and letting you know how we get on with 2026 Disruptive Franchise Awards too. Have a great one. I'll see you next week.